All right, so today is May 18, 2018. This is the meeting of the CSI implementation group. I've been out for the last couple of weeks for KubeCon and then for work. So I'm going to be playing a little bit of catch up. Thank you to Luis for running the meeting while I was out. So we've copied over the agenda from the last meeting, which was exactly a week ago. First up are PRs that need attention. We have consistent handling of vendoring in Kubernetes CSI, commit vendor content to drivers repo, and remove dep call from makefile. Anybody have context on this? Okay, looks like Patrick is working on it and Sergey is helping to review it. I don't think either of them are on the line. Maybe we can follow up with this offline.
I'm here, just let you know. It took me a little while.
Awesome. Yeah, if you have any context on any of these, let me know. So it looks like the first one, Patrick and Sergey are working on.
Oh, I think it was, okay, so that one you can almost ignore.
Okay.
That's just to add a vendor directory to drivers.
Okay.
And which I completely agree, but we're going to destroy, well, reorganize drivers anyway, and we'll make sure that each one of those has a vendor directory. That's all he wanted.
Got it. Okay, cool. So we'll leave it there until that gets addressed. Building
before you go to the next one, I did want to talk about this one. I forgot to put it down. My computer just went nuts, and it's this one here. I put it 85 here.
Okay, let me take a look at that. Data distribution image driver.
Yeah, so I talked to this person in SIG storage, I think it was on Tuesday, and they were asking me where do they place drivers. So this is, I want to talk about this because this is something that keeps coming up. Where do I place my drivers? And I kept telling them, you put it in your own place, right? So and then after us going back and forth, if I found out finally at the end that this person can only work in a Kubernetes sanctioned location. Okay, because this driver is supposed to be a community driver. And so I said, okay, I understand now the issue you're having. So I mean, so he wants like an open source driver he wants to work on, but he can only work on it with other people in a, like I said, in a Kubernetes CNCF place.
Yeah.
So I said, well, put a proposal. We can call it something on the Kubernetes as CSI, something dash driver.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Like this one makes sense. It's kind of Kubernetes specific. It'll probably have logic that's Kubernetes specific. Only thing is I would probably prefer Kubernetes-CSI/driver dash something. That way all the drivers are kind of next to each other.
Oh, yeah, so driver first dash the driver name. Yeah, that's easy. Yeah. And the only thing that I have concern on is who is, right now I'm reviewing like almost four repos, right?
Yep.
Right. And so either, I can review this one too, or I can be the pusher, or we can start adding things like owners files in GitHub so that we get their reviewers first and I just push it in. You see what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Whoever writes the majority of the code should probably be the owner of that repo.
Yep.
They are responsible for helping maintain and manage it.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, okay, so this again goes into the work that we need to do for breaking things up, which we can talk about after. It's I think it's number 81, issue number 81. So
okay.
Yeah, this one.
Cool. Seems reasonable. Next up is building and testing sidecar containers. Proposal for end-to-end test and makefile changes is in this issue document. PRs to discuss that need attention. Luis needs to review.
Yeah, I have a comment on that too. Okay. So the way that I think his name is Patrick.
Patrick. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the way he was trying to do is that he was trying to put them all together, like create like a distribution of all our work, right? Mm-hmm. And right now we're not very well set up for that. I mean,
doesn't the Kubernetes end-to-end test kind of do that?
The Kubernetes end-to-end test only tests the host path driver and the Cyclic containers, right? Mm-hmm. But he wanted to kind of see what he's trying to do. He's trying to push all of them together. So I think this is kind of out of the scope of our repo and our work. Mm-hmm. He did add those changes to each one of the repos. I reviewed them and merged it. So it's just a rewording of the Docker stuff. But the last thing at the end is where I said, like, sorry, not the end, a little bit above that. Yeah, right there. It says go run hack above that. So right now this is he's doing it locally. Mm-hmm. So I say that's not really an end-to-end test. So that's why we need to figure out how to do this maybe easier on a non-GCE thing, or I don't know.
Is the what he's trying to do is like bundle all the sidecar containers into a single Docker image?
No, he's trying to build them all, build them all, push them all, and then run E2E.
Oh, okay. And this is to kind of add hooks for building every PR?
I don't know. I don't know about that. Okay. But I think maybe he was just writing his driver and he wanted to get the latest of everything. Okay. And he felt like he had to compile each one.
Oh, individually.
Yeah.
So this would just be a script to be able to quickly build everything and create a container?
I think as of now, I've merged his work that he wanted,
okay,
which is the makefile changes. And then after that, I think it's E2E discussion between him and I, and we can figure out what to do next.
Okay, so let's say he's reviewing.
Yeah.
Next up is update docs for Kubernetes 1.10.
Yeah, I was skipped that. Just take that off.
Just outstanding for now.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Fix detach when volume attachment does not exist. Needs review. Oh, looks like that's been reviewed and merged. So volume attachment not found should be treated as a successful detach. That is correct. And looks like David helped review that and it got approved and merged. So we'll go ahead and mark that as green.
Nice. That's in master?
That is in Kubernetes master, correct? So it will be part of the next release.
All right. Should that be backported, that one? Could it cause issues or not?
I mean, right now we're in alpha beta, so yeah, we could probably port it back to 1.10.
Just wondering.
All the way to 1.9 though.
No, just 1.10, just 1.10.
This totally should go back to 1.
Yeah. Return attach error to attach detach controller. It's still currently open. The plugin should not wait with errors for wait for attach. Wait for attach runs on the node, not in attach detach controller. So this needs review. Let's see, CSI attacher. This might be a good PR for Vlad to review. Vlad, if you're on the line, you might want to take a look at this one.
Okay, I'll take a look.
We'll also take a look at it, but yeah. Mark that as orange. SE Linux support. I thought this was already merged. Enable SE Linux support, relabeling, and CSI volume. CSI volume plugin should provide correct information and get attributes call so that kubelet can ask container runtime to relabel the volume. Therefore, CSI volume plugin needs to check random volume mounted. Okay. Okay. Anybody familiar with SE Linux willing to take a look at this?
I was just looking at the code right now, and I know nothing about SE Linux.
Okay. I think the people who know most about it are folks at Red Hat, so we'll have to trust you on a little bit on it. I'll take a look at that as well. Leader election in external attacher. Ooh.
Oh yeah, I reviewed that one. I thought I merged it.
Yeah, it looks like it's merged. Is
Yeah,
this using the Kubernetes for leader election, or is it using its own?
It's using, I think, an imported Kubernetes client leader election.
Okay. Yeah, Kubernetes has a really neat thing in the API that lets you do leader election.
Yeah, I think you skipped the line.
Yeah. That way you don't have to implement your own Paxos or something else.
Yeah, I think it's on the top. I think you skipped it. Keep going up. Yeah, it's this section there. And that comes from leader election, which is, see, it's in the Go client tools. So yeah, he's pulling in
Nice.
Kubernetes.
And this is for the external attacher. Are we going to do the same thing for external provisioner?
Yeah, we can do that. We can, I was wondering if at some point we can get some, like this PR, like just moving this to external provisioner should be a help wanted. We can give anybody, the ability to participate.
So what's this comment about? One attacher is the leader and processes every attachment. Others stand down and wait. This is different than the external provisioner, which elects a leader for each PVC separately, so it actually scales with the number of provisioners. Having separate election for each PVC or volume attachment, in my opinion, loads the API server a lot.
I don't know about that.
So it sounds like what that's saying is that the external provisioner already has the ability to run HA active instead of active passive.
Oh, okay.
We'll have to reconfirm with Jan if that's the case. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right, so those are the pending PRs. Looks like a lot of them got merged already. Bugs that are currently open, CSI end-to-end test, occasionally flakes. Looks like updates was that it hasn't flaked since April 30th. Let's take a quick look at that if we can. Yeah, it looks like it's solid. Good job, guys. So I guess next step would be to remove the flaky label so that these start running as part of the regular tests.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to take a action item to do that?
I can do that. It takes 2 seconds.
Perfect. That's a huge step forward. I'm very happy to see that. Attacher timeouts, decision, add timeouts, exponential back off to attacher. Drivers can decide what happens on timeout. Looks like we're still looking for a volunteer for that. I think this also goes back to something we're discussing at the Kubernetes face-to-face that Chris brought up, which was that the external provisioner code currently After it fails to create a volume, we'll immediately try to delete it. And then it'll try to recreate it again. And then if it times out, it'll delete it. It shouldn't be doing that. It should create the volume. If it fails, do exponential back off and retry, and only try to delete the volume if it absolutely gives up. So there's that too. Let's leave those as open items for now.
Are you sure that it's not already there? I mean, I remember working on that, and
Right.
it was.
So I think, according to Chris, there's two aspects of it. There's the external CSI external provisioner, and then there's the external provisioner library, which currently lives under Kubernetes / external storage or somewhere.
Oh, okay.
External library apparently has this logic inside of it. So I think you fixed it on the CSI side, but the internal logic of that external library is still broken.
Got it. Okay.
If you're interested in exploring this, feel free to take a look. Otherwise, we'll leave this as looking for volunteers. Okay. Any other updates anybody wants to give before we go through the task list? Okay. Let's go through the task list real quick. Sidecar containers should output version when they come up. Looks like all of the PRs for this have merged. Or are we still looking for provisioner and driver registrar?
No, everything's still merged. I just actually
Okay.
want to say thanks to Shubheksha. I want to make sure I'm saying that correct for confirming.
Yeah, that's good.
Cool. Thank you, Shubheksha.
No problem.
What's that, Vlad?
Next up is block volume alpha support. So Vlad and I have a meeting scheduled at, I believe, 11 today, or in 30 minutes to discuss this. Vlad, is there anything you want to add about this?
I think it was breaking up and his voice was breaking.
Okay.
He was trying to say something a while ago and he broke.
All right. If you want to add anything, feel free to throw it in chat. We can pull that up. Otherwise, we'll just move on to the next item. Topology support in CSI. I've finally gotten some time to work on it. I'm refreshing the PR. I spoke with G, and he seems to be in support of it now. So I'm going to continue to follow up on this and see if we could get this merged. Liveness probe repo release branch and versioning needed.
I have not done that.
Okay.
Yes.
Why is this a P0?
I don't know. That should be like a P2 or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's P0. Let's bump that to P2.
So yeah, so can we add an item for tracking topology support in the Kubernetes CSI implementation? I'm not sure if that's in here already. And I can probably, I put some thought into it, and I could probably propose something, review the PR with you guys maybe sometime next week.
Okay, sounds good. I think code freeze for Kubernetes is coming up in a little more than a week, so we're getting pretty tight. We got to keep an eye on that. But sounds good.
I don't think the actual implementation will go in this quarter.
Okay, that's fine. I think as long as we have a design and we have some prototype, that'll be okay. We can do the work next quarter. Mm-hmm. And also, if a lot of the work is on the external components, that might help a lot too. if we can break down the work between what's going to be in tree and what's going to be in the external components. Only the in tree has a code freeze. The external components we can work on outside of that.
Right. I think most of it is going to be in the external provisioner. It really depends on whether or not the driver registrar gets
Okay.
pulled into Kubernetes
So
this
if that's
quarter.
the case, then if we can highlight or we can front load the work that we have for in-tree, then maybe we can actually get it done earlier.
Mhm.
All right, sounds good. All right, next up is kubelet device plugin integration. Vlad, were you able to?
So
Oh, there you are.
I looked at, yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so I looked at the PR from, I forget the guy's name, but there's a PR out there for the kubelet, and it looks like something that's doable. He has a lot of examples, but I had some questions in the PR that as of yesterday, I hadn't seen any answer to.
Okay.
If we're gonna adopt it, we're gonna have to change. We're gonna have to change the driver to expose a gRPC endpoint so that the kubelet plugin infrastructure can reach out and get plugin information and then make that information.
So I was hoping the driver registrar would do that.
Okay.
Basically have the driver
So
registrar.
we do it with a drive. Okay.
What I would like.
Yeah, that would be a good place.
Yeah, what I'd like to understand is if we could have the driver registrar also expose a service on top of the same Unix domain socket, or we would have to make the driver registrar act as a proxy, because basically they're both going to be putting out gRPC services, right? The driver puts out the regular CSI gRPC interface.
Mm-hmm.
The driver registrar puts out the interface that knows how to do the kubelet registration. Technically, both of those things should be happening on the same Unix domain socket, so I just want to understand the feasibility of that.
Yeah, it seems ugly.
I think, yeah, well, we just have to expose, we just basically have to provide an endpoint where the initial get info can happen. So the registrar can serve as that. Once the registrar returns that get info driver information, then all subsequent interaction will happen with the driver itself. So the registration plane and the actual interaction with the driver plane can coexist.
Are they?
Does that make sense?
Can we? Would that work though? Like if I have driver registrar come up and try to put a gRPC service on the same Unix domain socket, can both of them do that?
Does it have to be the same? I think that's what Vladimir is saying.
No. So
okay.
yeah, if a service already claims a Unix domain socket, which is basically a file path, nothing else can claim it. It'll fail.
The challenge there is that the Unix domain socket is what is being registered, right? The plugin the kubelet is going to read that Unix domain socket and say, oh, okay, this is the socket that I will use to communicate with this driver.
And I think
well, no. So the kubelet driver probe really doesn't need to communicate with the driver itself.
Okay.
So from what I understand, the steps are you put the socket path, a file, in a given directory, which is being scanned by the kubelet probe. Once it detects that, it uses that socket directory to make the initial call for the registration.
So that's my problem, is that if it does that to make the initial call for the registration, then the service running on that socket must be the driver registrar, right?
No, right. It must be the driver registrar.
Okay, so now you've got the driver registrar.
Anything. What I was going to add is it can be anything that will return information about a driver.
Okay.
So it could be the registrar, it could be the driver itself, but in our case, it would be the registrar.
So now let's imagine it's the driver registrar. It does the back and forth to register it. Now, how do we tell the registrar to stand down and for the driver to come up on the same socket? I think, David, you're trying to say that.
Well, it should not come up on the same socket because it should come up on a socket. Basically, it would come up on the socket that it comes on now or something else.
But then
because
wouldn't
there's really no. Go ahead.
What does get info return? I guess that's really the thing. Does get info return the socket name?
I don't think so. I think.
Get info.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Vlad.
It returns socket information. It returns like version and the path where I believe what I don't remember exactly.
Does it return the path where the service socket is? So then it would.
I don't think it does. I think the assumption that it makes is that it's the same socket. And I think that's what the problem is. If that is the case, maybe you can go back and verify this, Vlad.
Yeah, I'll double check again.
Okay.
But from what I understood is the registration plane, which is where we do the registration for the socket, for the driver, does not have to be the same as the same endpoint for the actual usage of the driver itself. So these two endpoints can be.
Yeah, if that's the case, I think that's great. It'll allow us to pretty easily just have the driver registrar expose a second socket and then.
Right, because once the registration happened, the kubelet has nothing to do with the actual driver.
Right. Okay,
right.
so let's
I'll double check
that. Now, the other cool thing is I talked to G at KubeCon, and he said he was open and willing to actually incorporate the device plugin registration stuff into CSI. So that is another angle that you can look at, is that if we were to merge this API with the existing CSI API, would there be any collisions or would it be a clean merge?
Right. Yeah, I would let's discuss what that would look like, because it might not be a one-to-one with what's going on with the kubelet plugin. The kubelet plugin is pretty simple as far as its requirements.
Yep.
But if we keep it, I mean, if it follows the same workflow or the same flow, then we should be okay.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'm concerned about is naming, because I think the device plugin mechanism was naming the service identity as well, which may be okay. I just want to make sure that the methods that it has don't collide with the methods that already exist in CSI.
Yeah, so the naming issue that I came up with and I pointed out is the initial directory, the socket directory, where the kubelet does the discovery of what's out there. Right now, it's a flat directory, and both device plugin and CSI plugin can dump a socket file there, so there could be collisions. So I put some comments on the PR, so I haven't gone and checked to see what.
So what I would really like to see there is they should do a full recursive auto detect directory structure, so that you could have like separate directories for your CSI drivers, separate directories for your device plugins.
Right.
Have separate directories underneath that. Yeah,
and that's kind of what I suggested. Maybe have two watchers, one for CSI, for now, because the PR author was saying that later on they're gonna have deep subdirectory scanning.
Okay, as long as that's on the roadmap and they call it explicitly out in the design, I think that's fine for a V1.
Yeah. I'll circle back and
Waiting for you.
And I'll report on Monday what I find.
Okay.
And how quick we can get that integration done.
Sounds good. All right, thanks a lot for that. I think we can move that to orange for now.
Sure.
Just a quick question, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Why do we need this?
For consistency across the rest of Kubernetes, CSI is not the only volume plugin interface, and we don't want to have 20 different ways for 20 different plugin types to be able to communicate with Kubernetes.
Got it.
Having, basing
Got it.
off a directory structure is not the most robust thing.
Got it.
And the other thing too is multiple, in a case where you have multiple CSI drivers deployed, you want a consistent way of registering them and finding them out.
Okay.
All right, cool. Good progress. Thanks, Vlad.
Sure.
Next up is pull the driver registrar logic into kubelet. This one is pretty high price since it's a security issue. Any updates? Is Felipe on the line?
Now we need to make a side meeting for this.
Okay.
Yeah, because basically I looked through the code to see how it can be implemented, and it seems that it's fairly easy thing, except there is a catch-22 here. A registrar, when it marks the node with the label, it knows the driver name from the parameter, like the startup parameter. We provided a name. But if it's a part of the kubelet, then I need to call CSI driver to figure out what the name of that driver.
Yeah, this is why we need that driver. This previous work here at kubelet device plugin registration. Interesting.
So I put all the code in, and then I realized, hell, how am I supposed to get the driver name? And so that's why I asked Luis maybe to set up extra meeting where we could basically see what it can be resolved, at least maybe temporarily before the device plugin work gets completed.
Yep.
Or we wait and then come back to this point after it's done. So it's.
Okay, so that means that the device plugin work has even higher priority this quarter then. Okay, feel free to set up a meeting to hash that out.
Maybe we could also involve Jordan, because basically I think it was from him we got some sort of a pushback with for the security concerns.
Yeah, I think he's the one who raised this issue, and
yeah.
he is okay with the solution. So I think, I'm not sure how valuable it would be to pull him into the meeting.
Okay.
I think he's just going to, he doesn't know enough about CSI side of things. We do.
Sounds
so
good.
It's between us. So if Luis, you could set up that meeting, that would be valuable.
I'll take care of it. Just let me. I'll start. Yeah, I'll set it up and I'll invite a few people. Yeah.
Cool.
You can put me down for that meeting.
You got it.
Let's mark that as orange. Find a permanent home for the unowned important drivers. Proposals out. So we actually made, I think, a decent amount of progress on this during the storage SIG face-to-face. We've decided that Iscuzzy and NFS, we're going to break out into separate sub-libraries, because both NFS and Iscuzzy, the mount-unmount code for most volume plugins is going to be identical, but the provisioner code is going to be unique per plugin. So instead of giving just one plugin which has an opinionated provisioner, what we'll do is provide a library that implements the common mount and unmount code, and then use that library to build a standard CSI NFS driver and standard CSI Iscuzzy driver that have some opinionated provisioner. And then other folks can come along and use the common library and pair it with their own provisioner if they want to. But that way the common mount-unmount code is standardized, and then the provisioners can be customized for everyone. And the proposal is that both Iscuzzy and NFS would live under would live under Kubernetes-CSI because there's no other good home for them. There's no like natural owner for this outside. And then for the rest of these, for example, Cinder, it's already owned by SIG OpenStack. They're going to put it there. I talked to Bob Wise about AWS, and he says he's fine with putting it under SIG AWS. And I believe Hamant and Jan are going to help build that out. GCE's driver, David already has that in the Google Cloud Platform repo. We may consider moving it to SIG GCP for alignment with others, but we'll take a look at that. We do have a home for it, and so I think we're looking good here. It just needs to be work that needs to be done.
All right. So what can we tag and start moving things out?
I would be okay with doing it as soon as possible.
Okay.
Just coordinate with Brad to make sure that we have some sort of like everybody's kind of on the same page, but I'd say go for it.
Okay.
We can create a Kubernetes dash.
I think it's like drivers. Did you want drivers dash NFS driver dash Cinder drivers dash host path? Like
the
that?
driver dash Cinder and host path.
Cinder, sorry.
We don't need. Host path, yes. And for the rest of them, yes. NFS, we need to not just have NFS. It'll be like, it's like a library, right? It'll be like the unmount library for NFS. So we were thinking NFS dash common and Iscuzzy dash common. And then
yeah, but how can you test them if you don't have an implementation? You can have it, the documentation can say you can create your own if you vendor this.
So we were thinking of having two repos. One would be the NFS common and Iscuzzy common, and the second would be a implementation. So we would have a driver dash NFS dash, I don't know what the hell we want to call it. Like
that gets difficult to manage.
It is, but realistically, we're not going to be able to come up with a NFS Iscuzzy driver that is going to make everyone happy.
No. I don't mean that. And again, I completely agree with the model. Yeah. I'm just talking about the repo itself. Yeah. That the repo can have a sample implementation, right? Mm-hmm. And that can be used to do like the Travis and the testing.
Got it. So you're suggesting have a single repo for NFS, a single repo for Iscuzzy, and within them you could have a NFS common library and Iscuzzy common library.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
And then that makes sense.
And then have like and have the documentation very, very clear and says, look, this is just the implementation is just used for example, but you should provide your own implementation for provisioning this NFS or whatever, right? So
yep, makes sense. So
it's not updating. So I was thinking like this, right?
Okay.
That's the repo.
And then NFS common library, which has
exactly.
Mount code that other implementations can use.
Yep.
Okay, that seems reasonable to me.
Same thing with Iscuzzy. And then we also have host path, and we'll have that other one called image, which they want to almost have like a host path replacement. That's the whole point of it.
Okay. And then we have So yeah, feel free to get started on that if you'd like. Okay. I think that's the agreed on plan.
All right.
Next up is in-tree volumes will be deprecated, the design for that. So David did a great presentation on this during the SIG face-to-face for Kubernetes. That video has been uploaded if you're interested in taking a look at it. David, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so we went over this in the face-to-face and got a lot of good comments. I think realized that the proposal as it was a little bit confusing, so I've actually rewritten a significant portion of it yesterday. So if you take a look at, I'd recommend taking another look at it today if you were confused by it before. I work with Michelle a little bit, and we managed to simplify it into fewer cases. So there's less duplication in the design doc. It's the same design, but I think I just managed to write it out in a better way.
Okay. The only concern I have with the design is, again, that you need to be in control of the cluster, and there's ourselves, for example, at Portworx, if you install on an existing cluster like GKE or AKS, you cannot work with this design. I was wondering if this works very well for.
I think what we're going to have to do there is make sure that the default deployment mechanisms deploy the Portworx drivers or whatever driver that we're trying to push out of tree. Because we have a requirement that the APIs be maintained, that means that the deployment mechanisms need to deploy these to not break those APIs.
Yeah.
I mean, we can live together, right? The internal one, the external one, like today. So.
Yeah. I guess one update is that Tim was mentioning that we shouldn't be considering deployment, and I was thinking about it a lot yesterday, and that seems reasonable. That deployment should be kind of the responsibility of the user, but that that makes Luis's point even more important to consider, because if we're not controlling the deployment and like making sure that the drivers exist, then like something like Portworx might not work on you might not be able to do this. Yeah, it won't work out of the box on GKE. And in fact, you won't be able to flip this flag, right? Because the flag, only like GKE could flip it, right? I don't think users of GKE can do that. So that's one of the main problems there. But
so basically, there would be a point at which on some deployments, these external drivers would not be shipped by default. The flag would be flipped over so that if someone tried to use it, it would say the driver doesn't exist, and they would have to manually go in and
please install it. Yeah, or we would never flip that flag on by default. So.
And we can't ultimately control that for all deployments, because deployments are controlled by whoever's running that system, not
and
necessarily open source.
And each driver is not like considered incredibly lightweight, so we can't just decide to deploy all the drivers or all the as add-ons or something.
I see.
On every application.
Is it possible maybe to have like the if statement, the change in a storage class or in an object?
In the storage class?
Yeah, like
you'll probably make it or you could do it in a config map.
It could definitely. We need to work on the way it's configured. I think a config map or even a storage class parameter might work.
Yeah, like even an annotation in the storage class that would make it really neat. Then we could change that when we install the CSI driver, and then we could say we want it to be proxied or whatever change to
Yeah. I think the flags that only like for example for GKE, a flag that only like GKE admins could change is probably not the best way to do this. So could you add a comment on the doc about that?
I will definitely do that. Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Cool. Next up is how do credentials get passed? That got merged because Jordan is awesome. Liveness repo release branch we already discussed. Snapshots, Xing has been working on this and it just got merged yesterday. So congrats, Xing.
Thank you.
So
no way. Oh my goodness, we didn't go for beers or anything.
So Xing, is there remaining work here that you need to do, or we can mark
so remaining work is basically right now we need to present this to SIG architecture to move the API in tree, and then once that's approved, we can focus on coding. So I've already started coding, but just want to decide, whether it is in tree or out of tree. Right?
Okay. So as far as CSI is concerned, we're done with this. The rest of the work is going to be on the Kubernetes storage SIG side, and we can track that work there.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, but implementation will still be here. Right? We still need to have
Sure. If there's any additional items that you want to track, let's track them as new items. And
Okay.
They're the smart, let's say CSI snapshot, CSI spec, add snapshot. CSI driver for AWS is, I don't believe Jan has started on this. Hamant was also threatening to work with Jan, so hopefully they'll get a chance to do that soon. Maximum volume count, Hamant, I believe, is still working on this. There was a lot of debate and discussion on this, so I'm not sure if it's going to go in. Move CSI sanity to spec repo. Consensus was to move it to a new repo in CSI. I don't believe this has happened yet, right?
No.
Okay.
Just do we want to do that?
Consistent new CSI repo.
I mean, everybody agreed that we should use CSI sanity, but it's living fine in where it is. We just point to it.
Who is the big proponent of doing this?
Nobody really. We all just said, we should move the CSI sanity and CSI test into, and we should have one, right? Yeah. But if we just we've been telling people just to use CSI sanity, which is in Kubernetes as CSI, and it's been working pretty well.
Yeah. I think the big advantage of having it in its own repo is that it could be, cut as cut and versioned independently. If it's not a problem, then we don't really need to do this.
I mean, it's already going to be a different repo there.
Mm-hmm.
It's already going to be managed as a different repo. So I'm just saying, like, what
does anybody strongly want this to happen? If not, we'll scratch it.
I like where it is right now. It has CSI. It's at Travis. We have a lot of development on it. There's a lot of community development around it, so it's quite lively. So
we have a lot of other work to do, so I'm okay scratching it.
All right. Until we get pressure for it, it's fine where it is.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And I don't know if Ilyas is on the line to give us an update on some of this investigatory work. And then we have some work that's unassigned, including can we get rid? Yeah, it's just investigation. How do we more investigation? CSI flex volume adapter needs to be updated. Anybody want to pick up the flex volume driver?
Saad, actually, I checked both flex volume and Iscuzzy. They seem to have already been updated to 0.2.
Oh.
I'm not sure about the testing part, but they are compatible with the 0.2.
Cool. Do you know who did the update?
I'm not sure. I can check that and update it there.
Okay. Yeah, and if we could get a verification on if they're actually working, that would be awesome too. Would you be interested in doing that?
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and mark those as orange, and we'll slide them up since they're assigned now. All right, I think that's all I have today. Thank you all for the status updates. So code freeze for Kubernetes is the Monday after this coming Monday. If you have anything that's going to be going into the core of Kubernetes, please keep that in mind and let's get that front loaded. The code freeze deadline does mean that your change must be approved in LGTM by that date. I think it's 6 p.m. on that Monday. So let's finish strong, and thank you for all your hard work here. Anything else anybody wants to add? All right, then we'll meet on Wednesday.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, thanks everyone.
See you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.